Wir wissen unsere Probleme.
We know our problems. We know Europe continues to have a difficult path ahead. But now, more than in 2011, we have no reason to despair. We have the necessary confidence from the markets, which is the condition for further investment.
Now, Europe editor David Tweed joins us live from Berlin. David, Schäuble talked of this path ahead for Europe. He also talked about the path ahead for specific countries such as Cyprus. Did he give any clues on their bailouts?
That's right. You know, he's going to be going to the EU finance ministers meeting, which will take place in Brussels this evening. Didn't give many clues on the bailout, apart to say that they do want to get some sort of deal for Cyprus if Cyprus takes certain measures. Mr. Schäuble is extremely concerned about the enormous size of the banking system, the banking business in Cyprus, and wants to see that being reduced. That's really quite key for him. He wants to see the Cyprus banks reduced in size relative to the GDP, relative to the economy. The other thing that we need to find out about is there aren't actually enough bondholders to be bailed in to actually take losses to solve the problems of these banks. So it looks as if the depositors might actually have to chip in. The question is, how will the depositors do that? How will they organise that, these finance ministers, without causing runs on other banks in other European countries? One idea that has come up is that depositors with deposits, say, over €1 million, might have to pay a certain sort of solidarity tax, like a wealth tax, and that might be one way of doing it without causing contagion in the rest of Europe. We'll find out at the end of that finance ministers meeting tonight, probably. Jean-Claude Juncker saying they don't want this weekend to finish without having a deal on Cyprus.
David, thanks. Catch you later.
We want to meet the Cypriot request for aid under the necessary measures.
There you hear Mr. Schäuble just there also talking about wanting to find some sort of solution for Cyprus if Cyprus actually comes up with certain measures which are going to be demanded by the European Well, look, what I want to do is pick up on those comments that Ryan was just making about illicit money coming out of Russia going into bank accounts elsewhere. Well, Cyprus is one of the areas where some of that money appears to be going. There's a big concern here in Germany that if the European Union bails out Cyprus, it'll also be bailing out some mafia bosses who've got their illicit money stashed in Cyprus bank accounts, and that's just not politically palatable here in Germany. But the risk is, of course, that if you bail in bank depositors in that bailout and force depositors to take losses, then many other people in other countries like Portugal and Greece and Ireland, Spain, you name it, will suddenly get worried about their own deposits, triggering deposit flight all over the Eurozone. That is the risk. It's the risk of contagion. So what we've got here, and this is coming from Michael Meister, who's a deputy parliamentary floor leader for the CDU, that's Angela Merkel's party, just an indication that Germany may be ready to ease up on its demands that depositors actually have to take losses. Now, what might go with that, of course, Caroline, is the fact that Russia may be involved in the bailout as well. But I don't have any extra new information on that. All I know is that we have got this indication that perhaps depositors won't be bailed in.
I see. So potentially to stem any market upheaval, that might not be a part of the deal. But certainly Germany is insisting potentially that the IMF is involved as well.
This is another point, another indication coming from Mr. Meister, is that maybe the IMF does not have to be involved in the financing of Cyprus, because, of course, when the IMF is involved, the IMF is extremely concerned that it gets its money back, and it insists on what they call debt sustainability. We saw that during the Greek negotiations. If it insists on debt sustainability, then the European Union partners, the so-called troika, would really have to squeeze the Cyprus banks. That would hurt the local economy. They'd have to put into place austerity. So the idea is that actually it's so small. Cyprus, it represents 0.2% of Eurozone GDP. The idea is that actually they could do this bailout of Cyprus without the IMF. The IMF might be there as a technical assistant, but the IMF wouldn't be involved financially, and that might make the whole thing more palatable. One note though, Caroline, even though it's going to be up for the discussions at the end of this week by the EU leaders, After that, it would have to go to the finance ministers for technical, work out the details, and then the whole thing would be ratified by European Parliaments, the ones that have to, and the one here in